I welcome all my fellow panelists and all the viewers on this session in the 17th Indo-US Economic Summit. And any Indo-US Summit cannot be without discussions on climate change and renewable energy. We can understand the importance of climate change and renewable energy from the fact that John Kerry, the special representative of the US government, has visited India twice now in last 3 months. So we all know what this world is going through and what the countries are facing. And we are no exception to that. And whenever we talk about climate change, the first thing which comes to your mind is renewable energy. I've had umpteen panelists, panel sessions on renewables, and I don't think so we add too much to it. But I want to bring a new twist to this whole thing today. Our Prime Minister has decided to make India also into a gas economy, which is predominantly a gas economy in Europe or in the Western world, or for that matter, even in the CIS countries. Well, rightly so, because they have gas and we don't have one. So we've had various initiatives from the government to push biogas, push LNG, and push CBM gas, coal-based methane gas. And the target is from today's 6% of gas economy to 15% by 2030. And like in renewables and like in electricity sector where we said one nation, one grid, he's also talking of one nation, one gas grid. Now, gas is considered a clean energy. Of course, it's from hydrocarbon, but still it's a much, much cleaner fuel than what we have in coal and other thermal assets. Now, are these two complementing each other, or these are the additional ones? I think so it could be both. At this point, I would request our panelists to tell how we can benefit from a gas economy and how renewables can be furthered with gas. Now, we are also talking of net zero by 2050, some countries by 2060 and 70. As a concept, I'm not fully on board with net zero because it gives you a liberty to emit more and then bring in counters to balance to become a net zero. What we have to do is we don't have to emit more. So energy efficiency is one area which needs a lot of focus, because that is what is going to help us in not putting up so much of renewables, because energy efficiency would have taken care of at least 10 to 15% of energy, which would have required compensation from renewables. So that probably could be one of the key game changers for us. We have done a lot, but I believe a lot needs to be done. So how do we look at energy efficiency again from an energy point of view and not only from renewable energy point of view? The third is India is now cusp of seeing electrification of its automobile sector. Every day we are seeing new companies coming up with electric vehicles. And of course, the bi-wheelers are going to take the lead, because India's vehicle population, 75% is accounted for by bi-wheelers. So if we are able, on a Pareto chart, if we can tackle this, probably we would have tackled majority of the emissions, because probably we know that bi-wheelers emit more carbon than a four-wheeler engine does. So we have had Ola announcing a 10 million vehicle factory. The big ones are making big plans. So how do you charge these vehicles when you will consume more and more energy to charge these batteries? And therefore, renewable has to play a key role. Otherwise, you could be back to square one if you're going to charge them again with the hydrocarbons. So maybe I would leave that to the panel to give their views independently. And we have a very august panel. We've got Mr. Pradeep Ratnam. He's a senior partner with a legal firm. So you got a different perspective. We've got Mr. Nathan Hallett from the US Embassy, who's the energy head for them in India. We've got Ranjit Gupta, who is the CEO of Azure Power, a leading renewable energy company in India, which is listed in US. And then we have got from Radiance, I'm sorry, Nitin Bhatia. I'm sorry. Nitin Bhatia. Radiance is a C&I renewable company. And so they are in direct touch with the consumers and could probably throw light on what the consumers think. And I, of course, would like to hear his views also. So maybe start now, and let's start with Pradeep.
Thank you very much. I think you've pretty much summarized everything what everyone would want to say on this panel, because this is exactly starting from green hydrogen to mobility to EV to charging stations to alkaline electrolysis to PLI to try and bring in the facilities to have green hydrogen. I think that really is the future, right? So for me as a practitioner of renewable energy, I mean, no period has been more exciting as this. From a time when, my teams would be busy with endless land diligence for utility scale projects, which never went anywhere, to DISCOM defaults. We're now looking at intermediated land acquisition through large state entities, NTPC, JVs with the government. You're looking at policies which are talking about, distribution reform, production performance linked, efficiency linked budgetary support for DISCOMs. You're looking at a new Electricity Act coming in for DISCOM privatization. You're seeing a new electricity policy after 15 years. I mean, that document is all about the future. Usually lawyers and regulation are one step behind technological developments, but this is the first time I'm actually seeing convergence. And when I say convergence, we're even looking at something like CESL, which is energy efficient, EESL, Ministry of Powers. So the government is at the highest level has taken up convergence between renewable energy, between sectoral reform, institutional capacity building. If you're looking at gas, people are saying, okay, let's do CGD, let's throw in the tenders, but let's also have regulation. Let's have independent regulators. Let's not go down the NHAI approach. Let's try and have something which is different and attractive for people. Let's have open access, tariff setting, and so on and so forth. So, as you rightly said, purely from a legal perspective, this is the most exciting time for the creation of bankable projects. With the National Infrastructure Pipeline and Monetization Pipeline, private capital is going to play an enormous role in this. Obviously, a lot of it is already, as we all know on this panel, skewed towards renewable energy. But one of the lingering questions I have had from an investor perspective is, why is it that you get patient capital from the Canadian pension funds of the world, but perhaps a little less so from the Americans? Americans seem to be a little more towards manufacturing capability, but not really financing. You see them in the climate context. I'm doing a little bit of interest subvention, and as part of some of my project financing, I often see a shadow US entity, but I'm not really seeing sort of CalPERS and the large sort of pension funds coming with the same, with the same robustness, which I would expect. And as you rightly said, John Kerry's presence in climate change is the future. So definitely, I think that all of that is bodes very well for us. Speaking from market developments perspectives, I think I do see a lot of changes. I mean, some of the bids we're looking at, whether it is tied capacity, with manufacturing capacity, or hybrid with wind and solar, or round the clock bids that are coming out, I'm seeing something qualitatively different from what we used to see. And most importantly, from a regulator's perspective, I'm seeing a change in the mindset from L1 to what is best for the system. So, the regulator may actually go that extra mile to try and invite slightly higher bids if ultimately that is more relevant or useful from a long-termist perspective for grid stability. Lastly, I do see, I'm really big on technology, and I was looking at today's papers which said, the role of Infosys and Microsoft in wiring up and augmenting Ausgrid, Australia's national grid. My heart kind of swelled with pride and a tinge of envy, because that's, we're home of IT, and this is really our moment in the sun to grab technology and really bring it to renewable energy in many of the ways that you talked about. So I'd be very happy to contribute. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but for opening, I think this is all that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Pradeep, just one question to you. Do you see a carbon tax regulatory regime coming into India? Something in what we have seen in the West also.
What you mean in terms of RPOs or renewable purchase obligations, or you're actually
exactly
looking at assess on?
Yes, you have a cess on a coal right now. But what I'm saying is even the companies where in Europe is trying to bring in a cross border carbon tax.
Yeah. Yes.
That if you're not compliant, then you pay extra. Correct. Do you see something similar happening in India?
Well, I don't because I think fundamentally our, in a fragile kind of economy, which is just out of ICU, and as you rightly say, we're still out of our 380 megawatts of installed capacity. We are still largely skewed towards conventional energy. All of us, whether it's gray hydrogen or blue hydrogen, we are emitters essentially. So I think something of that nature would be highly disruptive. So I don't see that from a policy perspective as coming in. What I am seeing is a whole series of ancillary augments to kind of push the green agenda. So PSUs are being told, okay, part of your fertilizer protocol has to involve green energy, and we'll give you VGF through that. So it comes in other ways, and I think that is probably more suited for a fragmented and emerging Indian economy than a carbon tax in one shot.
Thank you, Pradeep. That was very good. May I now ask Ranjit Gupta, and Ranjit, I would definitely want your views on how we can integrate hydrogen to firm up the renewables as we move the path of 2030, when you see large amount of electric vehicles running on our streets and with almost 20% or 25% renewables into the grid. Over to you, Ranjit.
Yeah, thanks, Sunil. It's a very important question that you asked, and at the moment the path is not very clear to me actually as to how this will all happen. At the end of the day, at the moment green hydrogen is slightly more expensive just to produce, and though we can see a path for green hydrogen to be the same as gray hydrogen or lower in the next 4 or 5 years, but we still need to, if we are going to use it in refineries, if we're going to use it in fertilizer, where you can create these green hydrogen plants, electrolyzers on location and use it on location, then it's fine. As soon as you start looking at transportation of hydrogen, because if you're going to use hydrogen for running vehicles, or if you're going to use hydrogen to run your electricity plant by combustion, then you are starting to look at transportation of hydrogen, and then that is a little bit more of a difficult issue to resolve. Though at the moment people are talking about converting hydrogen into ammonia and then transporting ammonia, because the transport of ammonia is fairly standardized transportation regime, and then reconverting it into hydrogen and using that. But just the loss of energy as you go from hydrogen to ammonia to hydrogen, and then to, or I should say, from energy as in from electricity to hydrogen to ammonia to hydrogen to electricity, the loss is tremendous, right? So therefore, basically you're putting in, for 1 kg of hydrogen, you're putting in 50 kilowatt hours, 50 units of electricity. And by the time you get back hydrogen, right, you have only 17 kilowatts of energy left. So 1/3 is left, 2/3 is lost on the way. And then when you convert it into electricity and then transmit it again, you are again looking at losses. So I'm not sure how easy that would be. On the electricity vehicle side, it perhaps is something which is more doable. Whether it is going to be better than electricity, I am not sure, because it seems that even few years from now, battery operated vehicles, electric vehicles would still be cheaper than hydrogen cell vehicles. And if you're going to look at hydrogen cell vehicles only for long haul trucks and so on, then I don't know whether then scale would support the reduction in pricing that we are looking at. So I'm not fully sure how this whole thing is going to pan out, because obviously there are many moving parts in this, right? And sometimes the cost curves move in directions that are very difficult to predict 5 years, 10 years, 15 years into the future. And as the cost curves move, sometimes things that are not very clear at this point in time become clearer. So just to be, just to be brief, in a way, wherever hydrogen is being used as a basic raw material to convert those facilities from using gray hydrogen to green hydrogen, I think is a fairly easy task, and that can perhaps be done at a small cost or no cost within the next 4, 5, 7 years. When you're looking at hydrogen becoming more widespread, as in being used in electric vehicles or vehicles, right? Or it's being used to generate electricity so that we can get 24/7 grid electricity. I'm not sure of the path. It is not looking so clear and clean at this point in time. But like I said, with technology, anything is possible.
Good thing. Ranjit, I have a couple of questions to you. The path for renewable is very clear. Even till 2030, the plan announced by the government is very clear. If you're going to see that kind of penetration, a 450 gigawatt plan of renewable by 2030, let us assume we fall short by 10-15% also. Still, the plan is extremely ambitious. With that kind of renewable energy into the grid, you would definitely need some spinning reserves to balance the grid. India has been short on hydro plants, more because of environmental concerns and our own regulation problems. And therefore, hydrogen, gas, battery storage are the options which people are looking at. How do you see this balancing happening, and you being one of the large players of renewables, and if you have a 10 gigawatt plans going forward, and you want to balance your energy, what are the sources you believe you will be able to take to give a firm power and a reliable power?
It's a very important thing that you are bringing up, Sunil, because again, like I said, to me, the path to 24/7 renewable is fairly clear when you're looking at regular electric batteries that are charged by electricity, or through a pump storage facility or hydro, a regular hydro. I mean, not necessarily just pump storage, but regular storage hydro projects that India has. And perhaps the gas stuff that you're talking about, we have 25,000 megawatts of gas capacity in the country, which is not used at the moment. We could perhaps use that as a spinning reserve. I have not read any study, or I've not done any study to figure out whether just this battery intervention plus the hydro storage intervention plus pump storage intervention plus gas intervention is enough. I don't know. Though the fact is that we still have 200,000 megawatts of thermal capacity, which is not going away anytime soon. So we are still going to see that taper off, and it could take 10 years, 15 years, 20 years to taper off. And in fact, one of the suggestions that we made to Senator Kerry, to Secretary Kerry today morning when we were meeting with him was this, that the US needs to help India retire coal projects, right? And we don't need central government, we don't need state government intervention there. Central government is the largest owner of thermal assets. But anyway, the fact is that at the moment there is thermal capacity which will act as something to stabilize the grid. And as the renewable capacity in the grid grows, we will have to use whatever we have to do that, because the problem of grid instability is upon us. I mean, it will happen in 2 or 3 years. It's not something that we are seeing far into the future. Right. So therefore, if you're looking at this problem 2, 3, 4 years from now, then obviously we cannot wait for the hydrogen ecosystem to develop to a level where it becomes cheap enough for green hydrogen to be used as a medium of storage.
Thank you. And I hope that India learns its lessons from California, which has been facing this grid issues so seriously, because there's been a widespread penetration of renewables in California. Thank you, Ranjit. I'll come back to you. We would now go into Nitin Bhatia. Nitin's company Radiance, they are into the C&I segment, and they believe in supplying renewable power directly to the consumers. So they're more close to the industries and the consumers. And therefore, I would request Nitin also to address that how energy efficiency is important from your point of view when you are in touch with consumers, and probably can, with at least 10-15% energy efficiency, can you address large number of consumers with renewables?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Jain, for the opportunity. So, two parts to your question. One, how energy efficiency can help address the demand for customers, and how would it help us in the future? So, look, I think one of the if you see the evolution of the CNI space in India, it's relatively young compared to grid-based plants, and the reason for that has largely been the sharp reduction in cost of setting up power plants, and also increase in efficiency, increase in the panels, efficiency of the panels which are being put up, and which is bringing down costs. To be fair to a large number of CNI customers, I don't think they buy green power because it's green. They buy green power because it's cheap. And while there are companies, the large multinationals which have committed to 100% green power, and there are a few Indian companies which are committing to green power and are happy to pay higher prices for your green power. I think I would safely assume a large percentage of them would buy it because it's cheap. So I think energy efficiency obviously is going to help us bring down that cost, and hence reach out to a larger number of customers out there. Also, I think as we go on, what we are seeing is both better better panels, as well as panels which are degrading at a slower pace than they did in the past, which only means we are going to bring down cost of power as we keep going on. So to that extent, I think both from the supply side of the equipment that we are using, improvement in efficiency there very clearly is something we need to keep targeting to increase the CNI space, because I continue to believe that customers will offtake green power. At least a large percentage of customers will offtake green power because it is cheap and not because it is green, and that is the fact of life. And it will always be the case. I don't think we are anywhere close to where Europe is, where the recognition of importance of green power and the ability to pay higher is more acceptable as compared to India. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question, but
one more point, all over the Western Europe, even Australia and many other countries, even take for point of Vietnam, which added 1 gigawatt of rooftop in a single year last year. Why is it that the rooftop segment in India has not picked up? And we are woefully short of our targets.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think, and this is not a blame game, but given that electricity is a concurrent subject, while the center has consistently been pushing for development of green power, and as Pradeep mentioned in his initial statement, that the reforms which are coming through the revised act, the changes which are coming from the center. Unfortunately, I don't think the same pace of acceptance is there at the state level. And I also don't think the state, and for various obvious reasons, and not to blame the states completely for their inaction, or, the fact that they're actually going backwards in some states compared to where they were in 2018, 2017, or even 2019, where they were promoting a lot of green power. We are seeing states take a step back, partly because we are taking away their cream customers, and they are obviously feeling the impact of that in their own P&Ls. Given that, I think we are seeing a reluctance from state utilities, from state ERCs, from state governments in giving approvals or regulation moving in some states positively, like we've seen in UP, in Haryana, in Gujarat, and in some states not as progressively, or even moving a step back, which is resulting in perhaps our targets not being met. I mean, a case in point has been the reduction of net metering from 1 megawatt peak to half a megawatt peak. And, which means if you are, not a continuous process consumer, you are not going to be able to put up a plant which is greater than 500 kilowatt peak. So these are challenges which we face. And I think these are challenges which will continue to exist. As a CNI player, we are going to have to work within the framework which exists both at the center and the state, and find solutions, including storage as one option. I don't think storage is yet there for CNI. I don't think it's cheap enough to get consumers attracted to storage-based solutions. But eventually, as cost of batteries, and I think batteries, as Ranjit put it, I think batteries would be the immediate answer to storage. Hydrogen could be some time away. As prices of batteries come about, I think both for rooftop as well as for open access consumers, that is a solution you're going to have to provide, because you're seeing more and more even banking not being made available at various states. So storage will become a solution we are going to have to offer. And as battery prices come down, I think it's a solution we will be offering going forward.
What, according to you, needs to be done to make this use of renewable energy as a mass movement?
I think for both from a utility perspective, when I say utility, I mean state utility, as well as from the final consumer, for it to be mass, I think we need to further bring down cost of a round the clock power. I think currently solar and wind, a lot of, at least at the utility scale, we are seeing both a lot of hybrid grids which have recently come out. I think Gujarat, Rajasthan have come up with hybrid grids, which is looking at round the clock and even battery as a solution. I think for it to be a mass movement, I think we need to be able to provide round the clock power at a affordable cost. And that is where I think storage plays a very, very important role. And my view is, give it a year and a half, you will start seeing a lot of RTC power with storage solutions coming out from CNI players like us. I mean, we're already studying them, but I don't think we are there. We are some time away from being able to offer that solution, because as I said, I think it has to be competitive vis-a-vis grid tariff. And for that to happen, we are, I think, 12 to 18 months away.
Thank you, Pradeep. I would be looking in my time that I could be not using any grid power, and probably I can run my home with a battery storage and a solar rooftop.
I think it's there. I think it will be there, but it's 18 to 24 months is my sense away from where we should be.
Thank you, Pradeep. Well, thank you, Pradeep, for that. I'll come back to you later.
Sure.
Well, we now have a special speaker, Mr. Nathan, who's the Chief of Energy in the US Embassy in India. Mr. Nathan, Indo-US energy security dialogue has been going on for a very long time. We are now partners in energy, which was lacking a few years back. India, US are partnering in climate change talks. Visit of Mr. John Kerry is a symbol for that. It's been a good show that India started importing a lot of gas from US. How do you see this energy security dialogue going forward, and how India, US will start collaborating on the climate change funding? I think so that is a key point of dialogue between the two countries, considering that India, China, and US and part of Europe would be the key emitters of carbon, at least for next 7 to 10 years. And we will be impacting the global climate change significantly compared to other smaller nations. So over to you, Mr. Nathan.
So no, thank you for the invitation to speak today. I think in answering your question, I think I kind of have to maybe set the scene just a little bit. I believe our panel today is called, Will Clean and Green Energy Be the Answer to Our Climate Mitigation? And so certainly from a policymaker perspective, this recent August intergovernmental panel on climate change, it's captured a lot of headlines here in India and around the world, Washington, kind of all over. And as we approach the talks in Glasgow, there's going to be, a lot of growing, desire, will to do more to address the climate change issues. And with that will come change. Change that's not only going to impact, the policymakers, the business community, the farmers, the workers, academics, across all of society. I think we're, as we go to address this global climate change problem, we're going to face a lot of change. And the thing about change is there's always skepticism, there's always concern, there's always nervousness. If you look back at the 20th century, just think of the change that transpired. We went from the automobile, the airplane, on our communication side, the phone, the internet. These were all major disruptions at the time as these technologies came on. Energy is a little bit of an oddball. We were a fossil fuel society in the early 20th century, and frankly, we're a fossil fuel society today. What the composition of that mix, it's changed a bit, but we're still very much, we still have this fossil fuel addiction. So what our President Joseph Biden has led the United States to do is, we certainly think this is the time to set the targets, the targets that we need to try to keep the climate change to the 1.5 degree Celsius mark. And so what we're doing in the United States is we're looking to achieve a 50 to 52% reduction from the 2005 levels, economy-wide net on greenhouse gas pollution in 2030. And we've also announced our net zero goal for 2050. These are high targets. They're going to require a lot of change. They're going to require a new ecosystem. We're going to have to motivate our best and brightest to come out with the new technology to help us execute this and reach the targets. So on that front, over the summer, our U.S. Department of Energy has announced what they call the Energy Earthshots Initiative. I like the term Earthshot. This isn't a U.S. shot. These are Earthshots. We're trying, we're working with our labs. We're working with all the levers that the United States has. Our first Earthshots actually focused on hydrogen. And our goal is to reduce the cost of clean hydrogen by 80% to $1 for 1 kilogram in 1 decade. The second Earthshot that our Department of Energy's launched it's on energy storage. They look to reduce the cost of grid scale energy storage by 90% for systems that are delivering 10 or more hours duration of power, and they aim to do this in a decade. So, we are, broadly speaking, we're in the United States, we're taking a whole of government approach. We need new infrastructure, we need new technology. We're going to have to make some major changes to our ecosystem. On that, and just to kind of give an example, just how far, how deep these types of efforts are. back in May, our Department of Commerce announced the United States is launching its first major offshore wind project. It's an 800 megawatt project off of Massachusetts coast. It will create power for 400,000 homes. It's going to create 3,600 jobs. Our Federal Aviation Administration just last week, they awarded $100 million for companies to start to develop the next generation of sustainable aircraft technology. That's at the national level. At the state level, we've got, to my knowledge, 23 states that have set some form of a greenhouse gas emission target. Someone mentioned before California, their target's to go carbon free by 2045. And this past summer, the regulators in California released a report. In order to make that 2045 target stick, the state's going to need to triple California's current electricity capacity. And then just, on the ground right now in California, California's got a storage site. I believe it's in Moss Point. They've went into phase 2 implementation, largest energy storage site in the world. They can store 1,600 megawatt hours, which has the capacity to supply power for up to 300,000 homes. The reason I'm saying all this is it's not only what we're doing in the United States, it's what we're trying to also do with our partners abroad. And to the question about work here bilaterally with India, and others have mentioned Secretary Kerry is in town. Yesterday, he launched with Minister Yadav a climate action and finance mobilization dialogue. So that dialogue looks to support India to mobilize the resources that will be needed to decarbonize the economy. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is bring together our best experts with India's best experts, start cooperating. Well, we already cooperate a lot on the analysis, but you can always do more. And so we're trying to work together, the analysis, the road mapping, and do more. We also have a strategic clean energy partnership that, frankly, is since back in 2005, the U.S. and India launched the bilateral energy dialogue, and over time, that's kind of grown. And so today, it's grown into a strategic clean energy partnership. And on that, both countries are working together. We're advancing work on renewable energy development and deployment. We're working together on the energy efficiency issue. We're promoting power sector modernization. List kind of goes on. So, kind of the big point I want to kind of come back to is I mentioned that disruptive change in the 20th century. There were a lot of people on a lot of the new technologies of the 20th century that ultimately served billions of people much good and delivered vast opportunities around the world. But bringing those technologies to kind of the masses, for lack of a better word, it required a lot of work. It required getting the economies of scale. It required the new, creating the technology. When we launched, man to the moon, that in and of itself create, that you need. We made it. We had a goal. We didn't know how we were going to get there. We launched a goal, and we did it. And I kind of think we're actually have it a lot easier on the renewable side than launching man to the moon. But I think if you look at the United States, you look at India, we have many complementary strengths on both sides. And I think there's going to be some tremendous opportunity to work together. Our scientists and our R&D, we are going to get the cost of storage lower. There's going to be, enormous market opportunity for that storage. At the end of the day, today, a kilowatt of solar power is cheaper than a kilowatt of any other power that I can think of off the top of my head. Of course, you know, the sun's only out there for part of the day, but we're working together to kind of, you know, capture that cheapest possible form of energy, identify the tools to get the storage, and you know, looking to the future, we're looking green, we're looking lower cost, and we're looking at delivering benefits for everyone.
Great, thank you. That was a great insight of how US is trying to bring down the cost of hydrogen and battery storage, because those will be the two key game-changing technologies which could make renewables a firm power in this world. And that is when, at that point of inflection, you will see the decline of the thermal or hydrocarbon power. I have one more point with you, and which was raised by Pradeep also. How does the financing from US, we have seen private equity funds coming into India for e-commerce, for many other sectors, but not so much for renewables. We have seen people coming from Canada, Norway, Europe, Middle East, and John Kerry even today mentioned that India produces solar at the cheapest rates in the world. So the money which is required, because renewables, as I believe, and I've seen it in the last 15 years, is also a financing game. It requires a lot of capital and cheap capital. So what is holding back the US capital to this sector? And what can be done between the two countries?
You know, our private sector, just like any other private sector around the world, is driven by profit. And so, you know, the companies, the investors, they're looking for what brings the highest return at the lowest risk. So, you know, we're speaking a lot about storage. You know, there are still policies and such that will need to be, you know, written, finalized. And as, you know, that type of policy comes out, and it's clear what the market will look like, India will attract more investors from more places. I would actually go beyond. I wouldn't even just look at the cash flow. I would just, you know, look at the energy finance products. You know, I'm aware of several energy finance products where American, whether it was the US government or US business people, but kind of sparked ideas in India and led to the Indian side, pursuing actively new energy finance products that went on to do some good in the market. To kind of wrap up and answer the question on the financial flows, it's getting all of the building blocks right, and folks are coming together. The conversations are taking place, and I think it's to everyone's advantage. And I think everyone wants to just we want really good blocks building a really nice foundation, and with that foundation, there's that's going to attract capital.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nathan, so much. Well, one of the panelists, Joint Secretary Amitesh Sinha, has not been able to join us, for he has got some preoccupation at this slot. But Pradeep, you did mention about the US capital flow. You heard Mr. Nathan speaking about it. What more India can do to attract that capital?
Sure. This I would break up into two parts. I think debt and equity. With equity, I think, it's about producing products that, as Nathan said, are worth investing in. So, discom risk, payment delays, those things become important. And maybe the answer is you need, to be honest, even the Canadians at the end of the day, Adani bought SBSR, right? SoftBank. It didn't go to CPPIB. So so I think there is what I suspect will happen in time is you will probably and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here as a non-numerate person, but as an external observer, you probably have domestic platforms with the ability to take risk. And then the likes of US investors will come in one level above as passive investors rather than take asset level exposure. So if you have robust platforms which demonstrate cash flows with credit augmentation, with credit support guarantees, with default swaps, with even the RBI stepping in and doing open market operations with a vibrant bond market, you probably have more investors coming from developed jurisdictions. On debt, I saw something on MEFJ and some of the largest PF deals have been done by the Japanese recently. So there is foreign capital coming in. Again, I think it is a little bit conditional on structuring those transactions in a way that works. I mean, look, unfortunately, the bond market works against, it's BB plus at best, right? I mean, that's not really an attractive enough rating for you to have a listed bond. You can do private placements, but if you want to do a good NCD, you do need to kind of have credit augmentation at the lowest levels. As projects improve, as discoms become more and more viable, you will have agri-grid feeders, which will hopefully in time take out that pressure of having to give free electricity and freebies and nonsensical cross-subsidy charges and so on and so forth. You will then hopefully, and with the government's policy to carrot and stick approach, wrap the discoms into some kind of fiscal rectitude, you may then have. So the answer to your question is quite difficult. I think there has to be systemic and structural reforms. Law has a large, interesting role to play in it. I mean, you would have seen the Great Indian Bustard judgment on, change in law and costings. You would have seen the CRC judgment, which allowed the Delhi discoms to get rid of expensive power from Dadri and go for renewables. So you can see that there are some developments which are happening, and clearly the courts and the entire kind of legal ecosystem is playing along. So if not today, in the imminent future, I do see foreign capital coming in. And I speak as somebody who's done a lot of Western project financings. I've done a lot of work. Currently, I'm working on a power project in Sierra Leone, where we're looking at Danish money coming in. And I kind of, in my head, I'm always drawing these, and then I tell myself, I should stop being an evaluated and comparative parent, and I should stop seeing it as, oh, India mein kyun nahi ho sakta? Why can't we have this here? But, the point of it is, Western project financings work on systems that are clear, where you don't need to go after the sponsor for sponsor support. The asset should be self-sustaining, and there should be enough security recourse for a lender to come in without having to worry as to whether that security will be enforceable or not. Right? So I think all of this is, the silver lining is a lot of it is changing. And I think in times to come, there will be capital. I'm not sure about the US, but definitely from more Western players, sovereign wealth funds, and credit pools from the West will come into infrastructure. That's my take.
This brings me to Ranjit Gupta, whose company is Unique, which is owned by a Canadian pension fund and listed in US market. And Ranjit, how do you see response from US investors on the US stock exchange? You are a company which is operating 100% in India, funded by Canadian pension funds, 2 of them in fact now, and listed in US stock exchange.
I think, Sunil, this is again one of the points that was raised in the meeting today morning, right? The narrative, I think, has to change, right? In the sense that, we always ask the US as to what changes would they like in the Indian regulatory environment for it to become possible for US investments to flow into India. And I think at this stage, right, I mean, this is where we are. I mean, this is not a new industry anymore. We have been around for 10 years. A huge number of foreign investors. I mean, 95% of Indian renewables is built by foreign investors, right? I don't have the exact number, but something of that sort, right? There are pension funds from Canada, large institutional investors like Brookfield from Canada, all the strategics from Europe, whether it's NL, EDF, NG, they're all present in India. Sovereigns in a way like CDC, ADIA, JERA, Temasek, GIC, Masdar, right? All of these folks are present in India. US also is represented, right? But through different vehicles, right? Not directly. So you'll have the Morgan Stanleys, you'll have the Goldman Sachs go and invest in India. And and where is the money that Goldman has, or where is the money that comes into Morgan, or where is the money that Warburg Pincus comes up with, or KKR or Blackstone, etc., etc. There's a lot of that is institutional money, right? They are taking their money, giving it to intermediaries in a way, and putting money into India. So it's not like US money is not invested in India. A lot of it is. I just wonder why, if they want to have a long-term, I mean, these institutions from the US, if they want to have a long-term investment in India, why would they give, 20% of it to a private equity player, right? At the end of the day, it's if you are looking to do investments in a particular country only for the next 4, 5, 7 years, perhaps it would be okay because you don't want to build capacity in that country, right? But India and US have been so close for so many years that there is no reason for this dividend, right? I mean, if for example, if CPPIB or CDPQ can set up an office in India, I'm sure the large pension funds in the US can do that too, evaluate the risk. And at the end of the day, right, if you look at any of the projects that are being done in the US or in the Western world, when you talk to investors, they're talking about 3%, 4%, 5% dollar returns, right? And India, you can easily, if you are lucky, you can make a lot more. But on a normal day, you can easily make 8, 9, 10% dollar return. So there is a difference, right? There is a 400, 500 basis point difference between what you will get on a renewable energy project in the US versus what you will get in India. And that is the risk premium, right? I mean, whatever issues that Pradeep has mentioned, yes, there are some issues, right? But no state government has ever reneged on its payment, right? There have been delays. Yes, there have been, there have been actions that the state governments have sometimes taken, the regulators have sometimes taken, that might not be the best, that might not be in the best interest of Indian developers, but they get reversed. It does take time, but they get reversed, and that is the reason for this differential return, right? So, I mean, this is what we were requesting, Senator Kerry, that the large American pension funds and institutional investors need to reevaluate their strategy and come to India and invest in India directly instead of through vehicles with private equity funds, because that only distorts the investment cycle, right? That money, because if you're raising a fund, the fund will have a fund life. It'll have a 8-year, 10-year fund life, right? And then that money goes into, there is a deployment pressure on those funds, and then there is a pressure to exit on those funds. Whereas if a large institutional investor came to India from the US, they could have a much longer term investment, more stable, and they could just be here and do what the other pension funds or strategics or these sovereigns are doing. And US is it's such a vast sea of capital that it can easily take these positions in India, and whatever positions they take, when we talk about $5 billion or $10 billion or $15 billion investment in India, it's peanuts really for the US institutional investors. It'll be like a minor portion of their overall portfolio. So where is the real risk in this? For the 450 gigawatts of investments in India, to get to 450 gigawatts, about 150 is done. So 300 gigawatts is to be done. 300 gigawatts is what, $180 billion, $180 billion or $200 billion. That's $50 billion of equity, right? So if US decides that they will take a 20% stake or a 25% stake in that equity investment in India, that's like over the next 10 years, we are talking like a $10-15 billion play in India. It's nothing, right? So really, I think the US needs to do that, and we look to the US to participate in the Indian story. And like Mr. Halat mentioned about all the work that the labs in the US are doing to reduce the cost of storage, to reduce the cost of green hydrogen. The world looks up to the US to be the leader on technology, and it'll be fantastic. These targets that have been given to the labs out there, to the researchers out there, and we could collaborate, with Indian institutions to further that research right? And make this partnership a lot stronger.
Thank you. That was very well said, Ranjit. And I'm sure Nathan will give this message back home to the investors that India is a great place to invest. And we look forward to the continued Indo-US climate change dialogue, where financing becomes an important part. And thank you all for joining this session. Really pleasure to have you and hear your views. I'm going much more enlightened after this session and probably learn a lot. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you so
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you, everyone.